Welcome to Economics Happy Hour. My name's Matt,
And my name is Jadrian.
And I'm Eric.
and we are excited to be with you for a mid-July episode, even though we are recording this in June. We're thrilled to have Eric Dunaway from Wabash College back with us for a second episode in a row. Eric, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me again.
And before we get started on today's topic, which I think we will have plenty to talk about on today's topic, what is the beverage of choice for the episode today?
Eric, you go ahead.
Well, we're in the middle of a heat wave all across the eastern United States, so I'm hydrating right now. Just drinking some water today.
Nice.
Matt and I recorded starting an hour ago. So this is back-to-back recordings, which means I'm having a non-alcoholic for my second one.
Nice.
I am having my Target non-alcoholic, the Best Day Brewing, sea salt and lime, cerveza.
Yeah, my first drink was mostly non-alcoholic. There was just a splash in my Moscow Mule, so I am having a full alcoholic one this time. Gorb Hazy IPA. This is from Oliphant Brewing, and I brought this actually back from Minnesota. I had a trip to Minnesota last week and presented for fee, and got to add a few beers to Untapped during the trip too. So it's always good.
It is so funny that you said your first drink was almost non-alcoholic.
Almost
Because
non-alcoholic.
I started watching Landman on the flight back from England, and there's the scene where he's like, I don't drink anymore. Give me a Michelob Ultra. And he goes, that doesn't count as alcohol.
It's a fair. There's a little bit of truth to that statement too.
I am Matt, by the way. So anybody who's caught up, I think Matt, you brought this up, I think weeks ago. I don't even remember when you told me about Landman. Very good. I'm going to second it.
Yeah.
I'm not all the way done with the first season, but I think I'm on like episode 8 or 9 or something. Absolutely great shows. Thank you for recommending that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, is the representation of Texas, is that like to you? It's like they did it right, or is it offensive? Or
Oh, and I have good news for you because my family is actually they work in the oil industry. So
okay,
my dad and my brother, not anymore because my dad's older and my brother's one at a certain age you stop going to Midland. But they regularly every year went to Midland to work on the camps and to shut down oil refineries. Like that's what my family actually does. And so I talked to my dad for Father's Day, told him I was watching Landman, and he said, "Yeah, absolutely, that is exactly what it's like."
that's super cool.
They said it was like to the T, perfect representation of it.
Yeah. No, very cool. Very cool. Well, today we're recording this. We recorded back to back today. So we are recording this on Sunday, June 22nd, just hours before Game 7 of the NBA Finals.
Yes.
And with Game 7 of the NBA Finals, and Eric is from the great state of Indiana, so he's in the heart of Pacer mania there. I would have to imagine that everywhere is going to be shutting down tonight. I would have to imagine. But with that, I suspect there will be more than a few people that have a dollar or two through legal or not so legal means wagered on the game. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the economics of sports betting here, and also then maybe tie in how some of this maybe goes to prediction markets and how all of that works. And Eric is, I don't know if we're saying I don't know if you'd be uncomfortable to say if you're the expert in sports betting, because you're not really a professional gambler.
Yeah.
But on the economics of it, you're definitely.
I'm pretty good. Yeah, I've been kind of following this as it's developed because I'm sure most people who watch any kind of professional sports have noticed that over the last 5 years, more and more of that ad space, more and more of that screen is getting taken up with odds, advertisements for sports betting companies, and you can't avoid it. And it's not even professional sports anywhere. We're seeing it in college sports. We're just seeing it everywhere, and this industry has become huge. My data is out of date, but it's going to soon surpass the revenues we're seeing in the professional sports leagues. The sports betting is going to be bringing in more revenue than the actual sports themselves, which is just crazy if we think about that. It's like this market's just nuts. So that's what got me interested in it, because I also teach at an all-male college. And so I have a disproportionately high number of students of mine who like to partake in some sports betting. And so I wanted to find ways that I could help bring it to them because I know that if I tell a Wabash man not to do something, he's just going to double down and do it twice as hard. But if I teach him about it, maybe he'll make some good decisions for himself.
So there's a number of ways to go with it. First, Eric, do you from time to time place a legal wager on a sporting event?
Once in a while, but my betting range is about $5.
Okay.
So I've been known to place $5 on the Seahawks here and there, maybe on the Colts once or twice as well.
Yeah.
But being the economists, we tend to be a little bit less inclined to do those. Jadrian's laughing because he's telling us that he loves to sports bet.
Yeah.
I give myself a budget. I in my mind, it's no more. This is the I'm laughing because the dumb conditions I put on myself.
Okay.
I will not deposit more than $100 per month on sports gambling.
Okay, that's a good rule right there.
Right. So, but I have not deposited in a long time. I'm not that good, but I am positive. So I'll put it that way. I'm on the plus side. But I love making some dumb bets. My parlays, I know we're gonna talk about that later. My parlays stayed to $5 to $10. I'm not getting that crazy. But I've put some bigger bets on my undergrad, the Sam Houston Bearcats to win a game. I've gone 40, 50. I think the biggest I've done is 75. And that's probably where I've stopped. I'm not.
It's funny
I'm not
because there will be
huge
some people.
gambler.
Some people listening will think, "I cannot believe 75 on one game," and then there are others who will just be laughing, thinking,
Only?
75 on a game.
Yes.
That's
You
like
get both sides of it, right? It's the
that's like my warm up. But I don't really wager much on sports because I know that I don't really have an edge. I actually the times that I'm most likely to wager on it is if there's a 30 or a 50% boost from the sites. And then I figure no matter what I pick, I have an edge.
Mhm.
But I had a friend from the poker days. I have a friend from the poker days out in Las Vegas, and he became a professional sports bettor. He he has a undergrad from Caltech in math and a law degree from Pepperdine, and spends 40 hours, probably actually 60 hours a week during the NFL season, during football season, studying the games. And he makes a decent income. But he is a winning player.
he's an exception.
Anybody who is like, I'm a long-term winner at sports gambling, I will instantly doubt them. I won't believe that anybody is, unless there's some reason. You're like, well, I only play if I get the boosts from the sites. Okay, well, then you can probably be a winning player on a very small amount. And there's a few here or there, but it takes a lot. The lines are generally pretty good.
Yeah, but that's actually where sports betting is so fascinating because if we compare sports betting to traditional casino games, the one I always like to compare to is roulette. Roulette is well known to have about just under an 8% edge for the house, the modern roulette wheel with 39 spaces. But for that, we know that exists from probability theory. We know that exists from the law of large numbers and the central limit theory and a whole bunch of things that are really only interesting to economists and statisticians. But what's so fascinating about sports betting is that we're only ever going to get one observation. There is no opportunity for those statistical theories to play. And so there creates that space to where if I have better information than the sports book does, I actually have the edge in the bet. And that's kind of what your friend was talking about.
Yep.
He has that edge. So in a traditional casino game, it's just not possible. It's just long run averages at that point. But in sports betting, it's not. And that's always what gets my attention.
I'm going to ask a question because this is the way that I was taught about sports betting. So Eric, you could tell me if I'm wrong in this space, particularly on the big games. That the goal of the house, the goal of the sports book, is to essentially balance losses, so that if the Pacers win, then all the money they would have paid out to the Pacers fans is the money they gain from the Oklahoma City fans. It's the sort of the line or the numbers that we're seeing are not necessarily the true predictions of the outcome of the game, but rather this balancing of the book so that
Mhm.
Essentially, the house never loses. You always get your vig
So that is, I think, the correct way
on the
to look at
big
it.
games, right? Because like on the
Yeah.
small games, there's not enough. There's not enough bets to do that.
Yeah, like we see it in especially like for larger games where they're so evenly matched that it's effectively a coin flip.
Hmm.
And so, real quick before we get into that, we should probably talk about what a money line is. So, whenever there is a potential wager for an event, the sports book will release a money line. That's going to be a positive or a negative number. So, for instance, I'm looking at the Game 7 of the NBA Championships right now, and Oklahoma City Thunder are favorites to win. This is according to DraftKings. The money line is negative 260. Okay. So when you get a negative money line, that means it's more likely to happen. So the way we read that is if I risk $260, I have the chance to win 100. So I have to pay 260 to win 100. Now, if that were a positive number, it's less likely to happen. And so in that case, let's say the was like plus 200. I would have to risk 100 in order to win 200. It goes the other way, but it's always centered around that number 100. So I'm saying all this because when we look at a sports book, if they have relatively good information and there's a game that's effectively a coin toss, we notice that the money line for both teams is usually negative 110. That's what they set. So for either team, you have to bet $110 for a chance to win $100. So think about that let's say 50% of the players bet one team, 50% of players bet the other team. The players that bet 110, they only got 100, but you got the 110 from all the other players. That's $20 for the sports book if they balance it out well. And so a lot of the money lines we're seeing is an effort to balance that, but there's going to be a cut for the house. They want to take a rake off of all of these and they want to balance it as best as they can. We saw what happens when it's not balanced well. They don't, not quite with a money line, but this was the Kentucky Derby, I think 2022, where Rich Strike 99-1 odds won the whole thing. It's so funny because the broadcast of that one, you see all these people with their bets, their millions of dollars in bets they had planned for it. None of them got shown after the race because none of them won anything. That race is near and dear to my heart, of course, because I was there when it happened. It was an incredible experience. But yeah, Rich Strike, 99-1. Who would have thought?
No, and I think from what I understand about sports betting and sports books, so I'll put a little bit of money on, but we're talking like $5-10 wagers, and usually I try to use the boosts. But then I've kind of in the world of gambling with poker and all of this stuff, so I know a fair amount. Sometimes the sports books will forego trying to completely split the public money if they think the public will be wrong on something. So if, let's say, everybody thinks Patrick Mahomes will always win, and Patrick Mahomes does win a lot. And if they think more public money would be on the Chiefs for some reason, they might try to edge the numbers a little bit to encourage a little bit more money on the Chiefs, or, as an example, or whatever it is. So usually it can't be too if it's too dramatic, then you could have huge gamblers coming in and really punishing them if they're too out of line. But sometimes I think the books do like to try to think that they are better than quote unquote Joe Public, as I think they
exactly. And like Joe Public is going to have a lot of biases that are going to affect how they bet. Now, again, the NBA Finals this year is a bad example, but because Oklahoma City and Indiana are two of the smallest television markets in the U.S. for professional sports teams. But what if we had the Lakers playing against the Pacers? An asymmetric distribution, way more Lakers fans than Pacers fans, which means there's going to be so many more people that are just biased to bet on Lakers. That's an opportunity for the book to make some money because they could just, edge out of those fans. We think of those larger groups. It's really neat.
Yeah, there's some fascinating parts on here. The other part, sometimes the books don't quite know how the money's going to come in. And there have been times, there's one of the most famous cases, I think, where the books have been punished was the Super Bowl between the Cowboys and the Steelers in the 70s. because the line fluctuated. It started, I think, at like -2.5 to -3 for the Steelers, and all the money came in on the Steelers. And then the line moved up to about -4.5 to 5.5. So this is where a team is getting points. So you're basically making a 50-50 bet outside of the juice, which Eric mentioned. So you'd risk 110 to win 100. But when the line got to -4.5, -5, so if you bet the Cowboys, you get 4.5 or 5 points. Everybody bet on the Cowboys. And the final result was 21-17. So the sports book lost overwhelmingly. They got cleaned out a bit, and because that they just picked the wrong number. They got it's in some sense they got unlucky. They had a goal and they couldn't quite make it work. But
Sometimes it just happens.
we're all weeping for them because
Oh, I know.
I don't know how they're making.
It's all right. Well, I was going to mention this earlier when you were talking about successful sports bettors. DraftKings is one of the largest mobile sports bettors. I imagine that the actual physical casinos are probably making more. I don't know, Eric, you could probably correct me on that.
So they are, and again, a lot of these mobile companies are getting scooped up by the more traditional uh, casino companies.
Like Caesars, I think, has a big stake, right? Or
Yeah.
they have a big online one.
So it's I always like to talk about them when we talk about sports betting, like how did we get here? How did we get to this modern landscape of sports betting? And it all goes back. Now, it's a 50-50 on what the year was. I'm scratching my memory right here. Actually, I can just look it up, but there used to be a law called PASPA, or is it? Yeah, PASPA. So the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. And what that law did was it made it so that states could not legalize gambling. And that's worded very carefully. It never made gambling illegal, but it prevented states from legalizing gambling. There were grandfathered states, specifically Nevada was grandfathered in because they had already legalized gambling before PASPA was enacted. So that kind of governed the scape of sports betting all the way up past 2000. That's why we don't see any of it more recently. But basically, PASPA is the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992, was struck down by the Supreme Court in 2018. Basically, it violated the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution. And so once that happened, it basically opened the floodgates. Now, the keen listener might recognize that DraftKings existed before 2018. But before that, they were all about fantasy sports because fantasy sports wasn't regulated by PASPA. But with that infrastructure in place, all of a sudden there was a race for every casino to open up sports betting because it just completely changed the way we did it. And it's only been 7 years. So it's just fascinating. Now, we also have seen before PASPA was struck down, in order to make a bet, you either had to be at a sports book in Nevada or you had to call a bookie, who was in Nevada to make these bets. But now you can make the bet from the comfort of your home, or for most people, it's the comfort of their mobile screen. We're seeing the bet size go down a lot because before you had to make it worth the bookie's while. If you're not putting enough money on it, the bookie's not going to be interesting. But now we can bet for $1. They'll take whatever you have.
Yeah, bookies aren't taking a $5 bet, right?
Yeah, it's not worth the bookie's time.
One thing that I just love about like these lines is the lines are in many ways a market.
Mm-hmm.
It's a marketplace where you have people putting their money on the line in order to try to profit off of the game. And sometimes it's pure emotion. Like, I like my team and I'm going to bet on my team. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's somebody who is studied and tries to exploit the public. But one part that I do love about sports betting is somebody who knows nothing. Like if I go to the game, if I go on to DraftKings, I can just pretty much trust that's a fair line. I don't know anything. If I just want some fun, I can put money on the game and know that's I mean, I know there's a little bit of juice for the casino, but outside the juice, I'm getting a fair bet.
Yeah.
And I should win. If I'm betting on a point spread, I should win it about half the time. And it's kind of a neat benefit of the sports betting market here.
And what you can bet on is it's just limitless. So I was at a Reds game last month, and with the group, I had one guy in the group was actually betting the speed of every pitch, whether it was over or under. And they would publish a line before each pitch. And yeah, he was betting $1 on each pitch. And I would check in with him every field. Like, okay, how are we doing? How are we doing? What's our stop loss at? He finished the night up $29, which he did really, really well.
That's a lot of units.
Yeah.
Dollar unit. Another type of bet that's very popular and a favorite of one of us on the podcast is
I was looking this up earlier.
Yeah. What Jadrian, why don't you share what your favorite bets?
So I did decide to log into my DraftKings account to see how I'm doing. I have a balance, which is a good sign. Maybe I should bet on I should bet on Indiana, right?
Of course, yeah.
Just making sure.
Scrappy.
Like a month later, you're gonna be like, "What? Why are they still talking about this?" I do have a current open bet on who will win the Major League Baseball World Series. I'm not gonna win that.
Pick the White Sox?
No, I pick the Pirates every year.
Oh God.
Well, okay, but I put a $10 bet down. If I win, if it's the year, I win $1,200.
Yeah.
So it's for fun. No, I love parlays. I'm very careful. Like I know that they're very addicting, so I don't go above $5 or $10 because I say that and I just scroll down and saw a $15 one. I tend to keep them fairly small because I know the odds are so bad. And so Eric will describe the odds part of it and why I say that. So I will tell you my last parlay that did not hit. I was watching the Super Bowl. I got 1 out of 3. I remember there was one game where I think I did like a 7-leg parlay. I think I did like 7 or 8 things and like all but the last one hit. And I was like right on the edge of my seat. So I did a 3-pick parlay for the Super Bowl. I said that the Kansas City Chiefs would win by 1.5, that the game would go over 48.5. That was the one that I got. And then I said that Travis Kelce would score a touchdown. I only got 1 out of those. 1 out of the 3. But not that long ago, I won a 4-pick parlay. That's clearly why I have a balance. Yeah. So Eric, please tell us why I have a balance if I was able to hit a 4-pick parlay.
So yeah, parlays are interesting. So effectively what they are is you have to not just pick one event to happen, you have to pick multiple. And so a lot of people like 3-leg parlays, which is 3 different bets. You were just talking about a 7-leg parlay with 7 different bets.
You got to go find it.
Yeah, you only get paid if every single one of those bets hits. Now, I find that parlays are insanely popular with my students, and I'm of course speculating, but I think it's always that big odds number. The fact that I could bet $5, $10 on this parlay, and I have a chance to win $300-$400 if this whole thing hits. And so it's kind of like, man, it's only $10, but I could win huge if this whole thing goes. And I think that's the nature prize. What do you guys think?
I think you're spot on.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're risking not too much, and you're trying to hit a big score. It's
you're basically you're gambling 6 times in one, right? Like
yeah. It's big number. Like oh yeah, all of these things are really likely to happen. So of course the parlay is really likely to happen, and that violates so many different probability axioms. I can't really address all of them in one podcast, but getting into like how a parlay is structured for the sports book, we were already talking about this earlier, that we need to understand that for every individual one of these bets, there is a little bit of a house edge baked in. There's some juice that the sports book is collecting. That's how the sports book makes money. It's kind of one of those, we shouldn't even get mad about that. Like they are a business. They need to be making money. So what we can do is we can apply just a little bit of probability theory here. We can take each of those money lines and we can convert them to a probability. And it's not that hard. It's an implied probability. And so if we make one assumption that we assume that all of these events are independent, which not necessarily true, but we're going to say close enough for this one, what we can do is we can take each of those probabilities, multiply them together, and we get what's called a joint probability. What's the probability that all of these things happen? So for instance, what's the probability that if I flip a fair coin, I get heads 2 times in a row? Well, there's 50% the first time, 50% the second time, multiply them together, we get 25%. That's kind of how a parlay should work. But what's really neat is we can calculate that probability and then turn it back into a money line. And that would be the fair price of that parlay. Now, here's the punchline. Do you think the sportsbook offers you the fair price of that parlay? What do you think, Jadrian?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Now, we're finding that when we parlay a bet, not only is there the house edge on each of those individual bets, but there is a second edge on the parlay itself, which suggests that if you were to bet all of those bets individually, on average, you're going to make more money than you would if you cook up the parlay. But people like those parlays. They like those big numbers. Now, what I think is also interesting, going back to kind of what Matt was talking about, he likes to bet when they have the boost. In the instances I've seen, when you get that boosted parlay, that boost is usually what gets you up to taking away that second house edge. They just give you that
I
fair
believe
price.
Depends how much. Sometimes there's a boost on just an outcome, and then it's actually plus expected value, no matter what you pick. But no, I just was logged into my FanDuel and may or may not have placed the same game parlay on FanDuel for tonight.
No, I might do this too.
It's just, a little bit going on. But, it's the idea. I just put down 10. Their price was 23, and with a 30% boost, it's $30. It's only a 3-to-1. It's not this massive, 150 to 1. But I do like those boosts. To me are interesting, and they have to have some pretty smart people working on them, or they could get exploited. But I guess it's small amounts, and they probably have people thinking about it. I had a nice hit on Sunday, a week ago today, where the U.S. Open, I turned it on right as the rain delay started. I was going to spend about 2.5 hours watching, and one of the golfers was J.J. Spaun, and he had bogeyed 5 of the first 6 holes, but then he parred 2 in a row. And then there's a rain delay, which is going to change everything up. He was not down. He was not that far behind. I think he was 3 or 4 strokes behind. And I got 20 to 1 or 20, like plus 2,100. And then it was boosted to plus 2,500. And so I put $10 down on it, which was a pretty sweet score. He ended up winning, and that was a very nice win. I may or may not have screamed yes when the putt went in at the 18th hole.
Skin in the game.
But that was honestly, to me, the $10 really makes the game more entertaining. And their juice what is their juice? I won that one. I'm going to lose more often than I win. Maybe with the boost, I break even. Maybe I lose a little. Maybe I win a little. But man, I'm getting value for that. Like, as a customer, I feel like they are providing me good value for, let's say I'm going to lose a little bit over the years. Jadrian, you mentioned you had a budget, right, on how much you might put in per month. That's good entertainment value, though.
Absolutely.
So I was going to bring this up, right? So, why did I bet? Actually, I looked. I had 4 bets on the Super Bowl. I didn't care about the teams. I've gotten to the age where maybe this makes me a bad sports economist. I don't want to just watch sports to watch sports. I need a reason to watch it, unless it's my team. Happy to watch my team. I did not care about the Chiefs and the Eagles. I did not watch any of their games during the season. I just didn't care. So the only way you're going to get me to actually watch the entire game is let me gamble on it.
Yeah.
Even if it's $10-15, I will watch it to see if these different goofy things I did actually work. It's part. If that wasn't there, I would watch even less sports, and I don't watch very much as it is now.
Jadrian, I'm the same way, and you're going to find this especially funny that when I watch NFL football right now, I think of one person and one person only, and that person is Ron Middlehammer, because I did so much first-year stats homework watching football. So I can't unsee it now.
That's funny.
Well, I did just put my bet on. So, Eric, hopefully in a month, I'll text you if I ended up winning.
Well, I'll see you in a month anyways. But so on that topic, we were talking about how it's really fun. When you look at your sports betting app and you look at your past bets, are they separated into your wins and losses and how they're displayed?
Yes. I mean, there's tabs for it.
I
Yeah,
can.
what do you see from your sports betting app when you win? Like when you hit that, 2,500, what the app do? Like
Mine did
So
not. I don't think it did anything.
nothing?
for the listeners, it's plus
Plus
2,500
2,500,
on a
yes.
$10 bet. So the mint it was $250 win, which
Yeah.
hey, that's a nice win. Let me go into the account right now and see what
And
it
you got me
is.
curious now.
Yeah,
I
so
don't think it does anything on my
Some
side.
some of them have had like when I've logged back in the next day, there's been a
Oh,
little
it's
like celebration,
confetti.
like you had a big
yeah.
win. They never have put out like somebody with like a big thumbs down, like better luck next time, loser, or
So
something like that.
If it does, if mine has celebrations, I probably don't notice it.
yeah, but we see that, when you hit those wins on the sports betting app, they're very, very keen to point those out to you that, hey, you've won. Good job. Here's your money. But when you lose, it's just nothing.
Yeah.
So, to my fellow economists in the room, why do you think they do that?
Behavioral, right? They're
Oh,
not doing
yeah.
it to lose money. They're not doing
Yeah.
it. Yeah, they have somebody in there who thinks this is gets you excited, and you'll bet again. You think you can win again.
You're really good at this. Maybe you should bet some more.
Yeah. See the JJ Spawn. How many bets in a row did I lose
I lost a
before?
lot. I lost a lot. I was trying to go through and see like what was the last bet I won. I did win a 4-pick parlay. It looks like what was I doing? Betting on college football. Oh, the Cougs. I bet on the Cougs to win the Holiday Bowl. Um, yeah. Well, actually, I bet the Cougs. Well, the Cougs were supposed to lose. The Cougs were 19-point underdogs, and I go, not my Cougs. So
That's
I
my
bet on
Cougs
them.
too.
And then I also bet on Texas A&M. So it looks like I did a 4-pick parlay. I bet $15. I won 200.
And then, so
Nice.
what was your streak after that?
Let's see,
Between that and your
one,
next
two,
win.
three, four losses, and I have not won since then. Because the only
Yeah.
thing that happened after that was the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
I
kind
mean,
of, yeah,
$200 is a a lot of $5 to $15 bets, though.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's the addicting part, right? And I think that's why especially a lot of young men get so hooked into parlays is that it's you look at it and go, it's only $5 or $10, and then you win 200, $300.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
try to remind myself that at the end of the day, right? This is always the story that they talk about for casinos, right? The casinos aren't built on people winning, and so I try to be very careful not to turn those $5 and $10 parlays into $100 parlays. I will say I do enter the number just to see. I'm like, well, what if it was $100? And I look at the number and I go, oh, that's amazing. And then
That would be pretty cool.
I quickly delete it. That's why I'm addicted to the Pirates. I'm
Well,
on the Pirates every year to win the World Series.
but I mean, there is the downside. I mean, like the vast majority of people can wager responsibly, but there is the small percentage
Mhm.
who struggle. And I think, we're all at colleges, and I think it's a big deal with colleges. I think this might be a good time for us to all say that our views don't necessarily reflect the views of our colleges.
This is
We do not
very
reflect
true.
any official position, although two of the three of us are probably at schools that aren't bringing in major money. But there are many of the sports betting sites are creating sponsorship deals with major colleges. Jay Dream, do you know if Virginia Tech has one by chance?
No, not that I know of, but only because Virginia is very special. Eric did a very good job of talking about being able to bet from the comfort of your couch, kinda. Virginia has a law that you cannot bet on Virginia sports in the state of Virginia. So
Oh,
as long as my butt is physically located in Virginia, I cannot bet on a Virginia Tech game or a Virginia game.
okay.
But if I do
Interesting.
travel, then I can go bet on a Virginia
Yeah,
Tech game.
If
So
you
I'm
ever
actually
need to.
pulling this up right now. I do have some um of these partnerships.
Well, I can name five:
Okay.
Michigan State, LSU, Maryland, University of Denver, and the University of Colorado, because that's
So
all in a PBS article. So,
mine's on LSU. So
Okay.
LSU partnered with Caesar Sportsbook, and Caesar Sportsbook injected a lot of cash into the athletics program of LSU. They have in their arena, there's the Caesars area. But what's fascinating to me is that when we start talking about the modern state of college sports, we've got all these NIL deals happening that we're seeing that these programs, they're going to need a lot of liquidity, and this is a place where it's going to come from. But one of the things that Caesars got access to through LSU for this was they got the ability to send marketing emails to students. And they didn't properly filter it out. So all students, including the ones who were under the legal gambling age, were getting these marketing emails from Caesars. And so, especially from the perspective of an educator, we know that sports betting has some significant comorbidities as well.
That's terrible.
Yeah, and so like I don't know about that one, and so yeah, we're seeing that like where is this going to go? Because yeah, there is a need for this cash, but what are we losing?
No, I mean, this is like, we talk about positive versus normative. I don't like the idea that colleges, if something comes through your email because they sponsor the university, it's almost like the university endorses sports betting to students, and I don't think they should. I think people should make their own choices, but
Mhm.
it's not it's not a winning proposition for the vast majority of people who enter into this,
Mhm.
and including the vast majority of people who think they're going to win.
Yeah.
And it can have disastrous outcomes. And I don't like it. And that's before hearing about the screw ups where they're
Ima-
emailing people underage and stuff like
Imagine
that.
Susquehanna just being like, "Hey, everybody, the Powerball is up really big. Y'all should
Yeah.
go out and buy it." You'd be like, "What are you
Yeah.
doing?" Like, it
Yeah.
benefits older Pennsylvanians, right? I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the-
we now
the
have
difference.
a sponsorship with the Pennsylvania Lottery, right? Yeah, no.
I just could not imagine that. That would, I mean, there's already those sort of little things that the university does, put it on top of Canvas to send out a little push notification, not even a full
Yeah.
push notification. I'm just like, this feels wrong. Um, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I don't like that.
There, in all this doom and gloom with sports betting, like we also need to remind ourselves that we have some incredible opportunities from this as well, because this paradigm for people who are interested in sports has created a generation of students that are really interested in statistics.
Mhm.
And they're asking questions, usually to help them build their fantasy football rosters. But still, I taught a statistics course, 2 years ago now, where I kind of dumped all the data sets that we had for the course, and I bought a subscription to Pro Football Focus. And
Mhm.
so I wrote a program to harvest all the data for every week, and like imagine the interest, especially if you're teaching to a room full of men, where you're trying to introduce Z-scores by having them compare Travis Kelce's receiving yards to all the other tight ends. I mean, it creates these opportunities where they want to learn about this. They're, right before the fantasy football draft, we were doing percentiles. And, I had one student telling me that he was going to pass on Ezekiel Elliott because he was only a 62 percentile running back. And at that point, I realized I'd already won.
Yeah,
So,
it's a pretty awesome if somebody's passionate about something that can be analytical, right? I mean, that's part of why we use pop culture, right?
Mhm.
If they're passionate about it, we can help teach with it. If they're passionate about fantasy football, if they know a little bit about sports betting, you can use it to teach.
Yeah.
And got to be a little careful around it, right? You don't want to necessarily be seen as endorsing gambling or
Mhm.
contribute to problem gambling, but it certainly can be a tool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can help young people especially make better decisions, which I think is always the end goal.
So any before we get to the pop culture, I mean, we could probably do episodes on this, so asking any final thoughts on this might be a little bit dangerous, but
No, I was gonna say, but this also I think gives us an opportunity for a future episode, because there's all these great research projects out there
Mhm.
about sort of the impacts of sports, and then now sports betting. And I think I saw on social media that somebody was talking about essentially looking at, I don't know if you've seen the Card is one of the people, one of the authors of this, but I don't remember the other one, who looked at violence around NFL games,
Yes.
and the idea that like when your team loses, you're more likely to be a violent individual, particularly at home. I just happened to see it on social media. Somebody is presenting at the Western Econ Associations a very similar finding as it relates to sports betting. The idea is that this rollout of sports betting kind of changes the amount of domestic violence that's happening. So maybe this is a future episode that we can bring on
Yeah.
somebody to talk
Two
about
two of my brothers are retired
Yeah.
police
the
officers.
sort of knock-on effects of sports gambling.
Yeah, I mean, like to the first one, two of my brothers are retired police officers, and they said if it was the Sunday after the Vikings lost, it was not good.
Mhm.
And I know that's not just there. I've heard those stories in other places, like domestic violence and violence in general goes up. It's not that's not a good thing, but that could be a good future episode. Might
It
be
could
a
be a
little
good episode in
depressing.
the sense that, right, if you're sort of your team is losing and you're also losing money because now it's easier to gamble 10, 15, $20 on top of it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we're to the point for the pop culture references. Any thoughts on pop culture to introduce on this?
Yeah, I've got two. One of them's more silly, of course. That
Okay.
we're going to talk about, sports betting gone crazy. I mean, you can't forget Back to the Future Part Two.
True. That's a great example. I hadn't thought about
Mhm.
that. Jadrian, have you seen that?
No, I feel like I
Have
need
you
to
seen the
catch up on all
original?
these. No, I've never seen. I know the
You've
premise.
never seen Back to the
No,
Future?
no, I know the premise. I've never watched it.
You got to see
Oh.
that movie. That the original is fantastic. The second one, it's been 30 years, but Eric, do you want to explain a little bit about what happens?
So in the second movie, they go into the future instead of the past, and they arrive at this crazy futuristic year 2015, where they have self-lacing shoes and they have hoverboards and they can achieve fission by using trash. Fantastic sci-fi. But while they're there, a future version of the antagonist of the first movie steals their time machine briefly to go back to 1955 and give a younger version of himself the sports almanac that has every sports outcome from 1955 to 2015. And Biff then goes
it's Biff.
to the track and wins $1 million, and then builds this incredible gambling empire off of his winnings, and it creates a dystopian timeline.
Yeah. No, that's a great one. That's a great one.
The
I-
other one, and this is more from the perspective of the house, I'm gonna have to go with Casino. So Robert De Niro's character is a handicapper before he takes over the management of the casino. His job is to help the St. Louis mob at this point come up with good money lines on these sporting events, and he's very, very good at it.
Gosh, it's been 30 years or so since I've seen that. I didn't even remember that. That's a good one. Jadrian, do you have any to bring up? I can bring up one if you want more time to think, or I could bring up two actually.
I feel like I'm gonna have to pass because I was like furiously searching Econ Media Library, and the only thing I have is Vegas Vacation. And like I'm like reading the description, and I go, I'm not sure how this even applies. Like I snagged it from somebody, and I clearly didn't check it very well.
I'll bring up two. Gosh, this is the second week in a row or second episode in a row that I'm doing this. Nate Silver's newest book, and I'll get you the name. I'll get you the name of this book. On the Edge
I have
has
it on my pile.
Yeah, it has a chapter where he talks about basically being a professional NBA gambler or trying it. And I mentioned at the beginning how it's incredibly difficult to be a professional gambler. And you go through that chapter, and Nate Silver to me is just the guy's a genius, like pure genius. And he basically he didn't win. He certainly didn't win versus his hourly rate elsewhere. And he was making big bets because he's Nate Silver. The guy's some deca millionaire. I don't know how much, but I mean, worth a lot of money. So I thought that book was interesting in general. So I would recommend that book for anybody. The other is from the Wire, season 4 of The Wire, and it goes back to our conversation earlier. But one of the retired cops goes and becomes a teacher, and he can't control the class at all. But then, when he's teaching math, he starts to introduce he says he starts to introduce gambling and craps and blackjack, like introduce gambling topics as a way to teach math, and the class is captivated and they're all listening and paying attention. But we talked about this a bit before. He harnessed an interest among the students to be able to teach them better by tapping into the fact that they all knew about these gambling games.
Mhm.
So it's been years since I've seen that, but it was, I believe, if my quick search and the AI was right, it was season 4, episode 9 of The Wire. So that's a couple. So we've come up with 4, Jadrian. So I think you're off the hook.
I'll happily go off the hook.
So, well, Eric, thank you for joining us again. Fun conversation. Appreciate
Thank you for
you
having me.
Appreciate you being here, and thank you to everybody for listening. Once again, we'd love your suggestions for future episodes. Also, comments, 5-star reviews really do help get the show in front of more people, and we appreciate when we receive comments and texts. By the way, somebody, I got a note from somebody in Indiana who said that the length of time to drive from Indianapolis to Evansville was 3 Economics Happy Hour episodes.
Oh, awesome.
So that's now a standard unit of time. That was the joke in there. But we appreciate the feedback and appreciate everybody who's listening. Any final things to say to the audience? I see you know. No?
Go Pacers.
We will know by the time everybody's listening, we will know whether they are the world champions or the runner-ups. But until next time, cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.